All right, the Minister of Environmental Affairs, Dr. Edna Molewa, has published the National Climate Change Bill in the Government Gazette. This means it is now ready for public comment. Minister Molewa is here in studio to chat more about the significance of the bill and the input. Honorable Minister, it's a pleasure to have you on set. Let's talk about this bill. What is the importance of this bill and what are the provisions inside?
Thank you very much for having us. The first thing that I need to say before I get into the nitty-gritties is to actually request our people to read this bill and make comments. There will be hearings throughout the country, and we are really asking them to make comments. This is about our recognition that climate change does indeed exist. It is here with us, but we also are saying at the same time that South Africa must make contributions. Even as we are a developing country, we must do our bit in curbing the emissions and cutting the emission doing the emission reductions, but also in dealing with adaptation matter, ensuring that we adapt to measures of climate change, to climate change. So this is a way of coordination. This is a bill that says to all of us, because, you know, curbing the emissions of climate change is not a duty of environmental affairs alone. There are many other departments, probably around 17, the spheres of government, all of them, all three, as well as private sector. We all have to play a role. Now, we can't just play a role not knowing exactly who does what. So this is an institutionalization mechanism of how we're going to be acting together. And of course, it does say perhaps some of the contents, if I may just touch on that. It says there is going to be a need for us to say, what are the sorts of things that or the bigger picture of where we are going, what do we commit ourselves to? A bigger trajectory that would have to be set up by the Minister of Environmental Affairs, obviously having had a dialogue with the country and say, this is our emission reduction amounts that we have to do, this is our adaptation amounts that we have to do, and therefore this picture would then have to be worked on and implemented at a sectoral level. Then the ministries of sectors like energy, transport, and so forth take their bit and say, this is exactly what transport should do and how much they should cut. For instance, right now we know that the biggest contributors to our emissions is transport and energy. So those ministers will then have to sectorally determine. The spheres of government will then need to implement. Unfortunately, we are saying in this bill, it's going to be necessary that we work as a nation, not as provinces. Not as provinces, because anyone can actually determine your emissions reduction, but we need to say we have determined emissions reduction nationally, and these are the sorts of things that the provinces and municipalities must do to undertake this kind of task that we have. So it is really an empowering tool for all of us, and in recognition, as I said earlier, of the fact that climate change is here with us. We can't sit back. The Paris Agreement requires us to implement that agreement, and although it's going to be implemented by 2020, right now we're doing the pre-2020 emission reductions and commitments that we have made. So what used to be called the INDC, Intended Nationally Determined Contributions, is now nationally determined contributions, which are obviously going to have to do, working with the whole world to do our bit in curbing the climate change, the emissions.
Honorable Minister, when you talk about climate change, the very concept seems to fly over the head of the common citizen. So when you coordinate your workshops, what are some of the things you think you can zone in for the common man to actually be a participant in helping with climate change?
I avoided using words like anthropogenic.
Right. I was about to ask you, what's the meaning of that word, and what can we do?
Human-induced action that impacts on the globe. It's simply what it means. So we avoid using that. That's a sort of thing that we actually must get out of the jargon itself, simplifying matters so that everyone can understand. And this is, I think South Africans have actually gone a long way in trying to understand exactly what this climate change is. I mean, in COP21, which we hosted here, as we're doing our workshops throughout the country, people were asking, what is this climate change? And then as we explained that, you know, you have these changes in the weather patterns, changes in this thing, and then you don't, as you plant your seed, it doesn't germinate. Say, oh, this is it. We've been seeing these changes, but we never quite connected, these things. So, yes, the seasons are changing. It's becoming wetter in the eastern part. It's becoming more drier. When people see those things, they should actually know that these are the things that are caused by the emissions that get into the atmosphere, causing the blockage, or rather the sun rays to get onto the earth because of, sorry.
And therefore the common citizen should do what?
The common citizens must actually ensure that they react. They react to that. Every one of us can do your bit. And that bit may be that I just switch off the lights, I don't litter, I don't throw away, I don't waste water. You know, those kinds of small actions that you save energy, for instance, as you don't use that. Every one of us and anyone, little bit that you do, as you use your food, for instance, you don't throw away, so that there's no production of food continuously, especially that which is water consuming, like those who eat beef, meat,
yes,
most of us. So people are turning into vegetarians and so forth. They are actually helping. Not that I would want to turn into that, but I'd eat less meat, and really just any one of us can help. But I could do any other action. So we are asking members of the society to do your bit, to help us cut the emissions. Indeed, it is possible if we do our bit. For instance, switch off the lights. You remember at the time when we switch off the lights, one evening for 1 hour, we saved so much energy. That then means that we don't use more coal to actually produce this energy that we need so much in the country. We are doing renewables. Let's get into those habits of using renewable energy ourselves and not even, forever demand that we use coal in our country. So it is those kinds of things. If it is in winter, as you can and when you can, don't even use those stoves, the little stoves, especially when you have heaters, especially when you can afford heaters, although we are helping people through other means of, working with bigger companies that are helping to help install in some of the areas where people are still using those coal stoves, small ones, to install heaters and so forth. So those are some of the actions that we need to take.
All right. So when we adhere with climate change rules and laws, how does that stimulate the economy of various countries?
Yes, very important question indeed, because as we implement the carbon emission reduction, we do that within the context that whatever we do must not stop growth, economic growth, because we need jobs, we need prosperity, we need our people to actually, be socially able to succeed. So it's socio-economic needs that we're dealing with right now. If we were, for instance, to cut the use of coal overnight, today, or close down any of the factories that's emitting the carbon reduction, it would mean that we subtract the amount of contribution that those factories are doing, the firms are doing in our economy, and then the jobs would be, the people would be laid off. So instead we're saying, let's, within the confines of what we can do, for instance, South Africa said, our trajectory is to produce at least, on a reasonable scale, trajectory of between 614 and 900 gigatons as we're going and reducing it over time, allowing production of the renewable energy, the gas production, other forms of energy into the economy, so that we then have new energy and clean energy at the same time continuing to use. And in that way, you're building on your capacities of alternative energy whilst not losing jobs, whilst not losing your economic activities.
All right. So, Honorable Minister, as you travel around the country to promote information on climate change, of course, you meet the grannies and the grandpas in the various localities. When they say to you, Honorable Minister, we've always had intense storms, heavy rainfall, and droughts for thousands of years, to that response, you say what?
I do know that, and we observe that, but they have not been as periodic as they are. The drought that we have had now recently in Western Cape has happened, what do they say, 1,000 years ago, to be precise, if I'm not wrong. It's not 100, certainly. It's 1,000 years ago. So the intensity and the periodic aspect of that has never been as it is right now. This is why the forecasters and even those who are doing modeling for us of rainfall patterns have got to be so accurate and so much on the ball that they don't actually lapse, because we can misread if you just make a mistake, because the patterns are changing so fast right now the period is quite irregular. So we've got to, these are the things that I would say that to people, who are grannies, no, we have had it, yes, we have had it after maybe 50 years or so,
Yes.
when the locust was passing this way and so forth. Yeah, this time around you can see how Cape Town is. You don't need as a rocket scientist, but just look around us, what's happening. We are really just in dire strait right now, and we've got to act and act now.
All right. Now, let's talk about Donald Trump. Now, Donald Trump knows a thing or two about climate change, and he's not a big supporter of climate change. As a matter of fact, he filed an intention to pull out of the Paris Agreement. What's your opinion on that?
I think that we have got great respect, by the way, for people's sovereignty.
Yes.
And as sovereign nations, people can make any decision. However, we're on record, as South Africa and many other countries, to say we advise the Americas, and Americans in particular, not to pull out of climate change. Firstly, they've been a world leader. Part of them have negotiated this agreement with us in France, and we were in rooms locked up, them providing leadership. So it shouldn't be that America all of a sudden somersaults like that, as he says all that. And having said so, you can't leave your leadership. And therefore, we do understand that all of us require development. But especially developed countries, in the convention of UNFCCC, there is a need for the developed countries to lead in technology provision and continued innovation seeking, as well as in capacity building for the states that are actually very small states that do not have anything that needs capacity. They need to be assisted with adaptation measures, insurances provision when they have disasters and so forth. Thirdly, they have to actually ensure that we have the adequate amount needed, money, $100 billion per annum. So America is part of those. We have to contribute to that amount. If they pull out, it means we are left on the ledge. So we are urging them to continue to be there, but we are hearing them as they say that climate change, Paris Agreement could easily stop their developments. No, we are saying a big no. If that was to happen, we wouldn't be there as South Africa as well, because it's developing countries, all of them, particularly Africa, we are impacted upon, and we are not quite responsible for having caused this climate change, because it's prehistoric development and pre-industrial development that has caused this. So we are urging them to come on and really just act. They did say that as they intend to pull out, they will still continue to provide technology and innovations in our meetings that we have had them. And actually, they don't like how the Paris Agreement is structured. And we have said, no, Paris Agreement is non-negotiable. We have actually worked on it for years. It started here in South Africa during COP17.
Right.
The basis was laid here. So, yeah.
All right, Honorable Minister, we've run out of time. Again, it's a pleasure. We hope to see you again in studio sometime in the future. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.